Greetings from the set of Metro and More at Metropolitan Community College, serving more than 50,000 students with over 120 programs at our 8 locations in the daytime, evening, weekends, or online. And I'm your host, Kent Pavelka. Welcome again to Metro and More. More of what you need to know about Metropolitan Community College. Start here, go anywhere. Very user-friendly information coming up in the next 30 minutes. We're going to be talking about Metropolitan Community College's continuing education, specifically gardening and landscaping. And our guest is John Nabity, MCC horticulture instructor. Pleasure to have you. Looking forward to
Glad to be here.
A lot of good information here in the next 30 minutes. John, tell our viewers a little bit about yourself. Professionally, where you're from.
Okay. I'm born and raised in Omaha, and other than 10 years when I was in college, in the Army for a while, but grew up in North Omaha. Went to Florence School, McMillan, graduated from North High. Came back in the mid-70s after my father passed away to work in the family business, and did that. And then in the late 70s, I became familiar with Metro because I had a greenhouse and things, and so I got on their advisory board. And then I started teaching adjunct for credit in the 80s. Taught for them in the Nebraska Department of Correctional System, so I taught at the Omaha Correctional Center and did some things at work release, and then started in the 90s teaching these classes as the need arose, and it continued.
Professionally, it's not all been education, though. I mean, you've worked in the field.
Right. I 27 years in the world of horticulture, and I was active in installation and things, and now I am basically a landscape consultant.
What all does Metro offer in the area, in this area that we're going to be talking about?
As far as the community ed or continuing?
Both credit and non-credit.
Well, credit. Wow, I teach the introduction to horticulture, one of the sections, but there's also various, that has to get you through the door. That's a prerequisite, but they've got a curriculum in floral design. They've got different either certificates that you can get, or you can get associated degrees, and that's in like landscaping or nursery operations and different things. So it's really a good broad selection. And now with being in culinary and that, we have more things that they're getting into, and urban gardening and things just to meet the needs of the public. Yeah, there's the credit, where you can get certificates or a 2-year degree, but we're going to talk about the continuing education non-credit part. And that's correct.
But you teach both credit and
both
non-credit,
ends of it, right? Yes, I do.
The credit courses, Intro to Horticulture, that one appeals to a lot of different people.
Well, it is because it's a prerequisite, and also the fact is that you, it's usually a popular class because you get a lot of individuals that are soon to retire. Maybe they're looking for a new profession. Maybe some things happen at their previous occupations, and they're searching in that. So it's a very broad selection of people that come and ages.
What about the non-credit part? What are all the courses?
Well, I teach a core group, and then you can learn how to polka, you can learn different languages, you can learn computer, you can learn technology. It just goes on, and it's all geared towards a person who wants to go for a set amount of time, learn something. What they put into it is what they get out of it. There's no testing. I use a lot of handouts in my classes just because it gives them a reference point down the line in that. But yeah, there's just an array, and they're offered really in various areas. I'll be teaching Millard South, Westside High School, sometimes the Westside Education Center, sometimes Bennington, but they're key areas so that they can reach the people throughout the area since we keep growing.
Yeah, folks can take a look at what's offered at Metro in terms of continuing education, non-credit at mccneb.edu, continuing education CE. So let's talk about the classes that in the horticulture area, the gardening and landscaping that are most popular, and one of those is the Landscape Design for Amateurs class.
That's correct.
What is this now? Is this one class or a series of
classes?
Okay,
this is basically it's 10 hours, 10 contact hours, 5 weeks, and the students get together in the evening for 2 hours for 5 consecutive weeks.
And which campus? Or it moves around?
It's never here. I've never taught that class here. It's when it starts winter quarter, I'll be at Millard South. And so it goes around. They move me throughout the community in that for, I guess, exposure to different people to offer different, because of interest in that. So
Millard South for the winter quarter this year.
Right.
But again, you can get all the info on the web.
That's correct.
On the website. So I know that relative to landscape design for amateurs, one of the first things you address is the planning and preparation part.
Right.
And I thought that would be fun in our show today for you to kind of give maybe some of the major tips about each one of these little nuggets.
Okay.
So what, for people this winter who are thinking about this spring and summer, what about planning and preparation?
Well, with the landscape design, it kind of parallels what the 4-credit class offers, but that's a 10-week thing. So what I try to do is to have people avoid making mistakes. And that's how I got into the consulting business, because of, basically I tell them, in horticulture, if you don't start with a plan and a good plan, 4 things are going to happen to you. First of all, you're going to develop an attitude, and it's usually not a real positive one. Secondly, you're reaching into your pocketbook or purse too often, paying for things again or replacing things. The third is there's that valuable thing in life we refer to as leisure time. And you find out that I just don't have as much anymore. And then the fourth thing that can happen is you fail. And then you start all over again. So a lot of emphasis on planning, on principles and elements of design. This may sound kind of funny, but right plant, right place is very, very important. And the fact is that I find the individuals that, they know that a plant grows tall, but it also has dimension to it, So you have to put that in perspective when you go to do planting patterns and that. So and we cover planting patterns and just kind of the basic things so that they, through handouts and through just talking in class, there's really no lab. Rarely do I have videos or something, or DVDs. And we take that, and then in the design class, their only homework assignment is if they have a landscape problem, I ask them to bring it to the class, usually the second one, bring a picture, bring some dimensions, any kind of sketch or anything, and then we will talk about it as a class. And then we come up to try to give you some solutions to that. And then everybody learns within the class. And if you have multiple projects or something, I just ask, please prioritize, because you won't want to get around to everybody. And most of them have something, sometimes they don't. But that's the way they can take a little bit of this paper stuff that we talk about and they have handouts on and be able to put it into practicality for their own yard. Most
of these people, I assume, are going to apply what they learn to their own homes.
Well, right. They're looking at maybe they got a landscape bid and they were concerned about costs. Some of them are soon to retire or retired, and so now their yard is their obligation. And there's all sorts of reasons why. Some of them it's therapy, some of them it's a hobby. Some of them just want to learn more about something different in life. So,
by and large, can the average person accomplish what they would pay for to have done otherwise by doing it themselves?
I think that they can to some degree. First of all, they have to put time into it. And the planning is a situation where, like selecting a tree, it's more to it than just going out and buying a tree, because you have, what do you want the tree for? You want it for an ornamental value, you want it for shade, you want it for a buffer when you're sitting on the deck or that, and sometimes when they don't do that, they just go put a tree, and then it grows and they realize they have guide wires coming in, and so the tree's in the way. So yeah, it's some of just the little things that get bent out of shape, and people forget that. And
what would you say, John, is the biggest mistake or two that people make in terms of the planning process for their landscape?
Impulse buying. Impulse buying, and usually if you go and do impulse buying, you haven't got a real good plan. So and it's kind of notorious around here that people would go through any kind of a winter, they're just excited for the spring to come, and so the minute the ads break and everything, they're right out there and do this, and then they say, well, they come back with 6 or 7 things when they should have only gotten 2. And then they start saying, well, where do we put these? And then the problems begin.
Are folks, are more folks coming in with a landscape that they want to redesign versus?
I
Probably,
get most of the people that come to this class come in with existing landscapes. I do get a few that it's brand new homes, you know, and maybe the SID says you got to have 1 tree, so they have that, and they have green grass, and now they want to do something else with it. But most of them are,
because redoing your landscape proposes a whole nother set of
sure,
issues,
sure.
right?
Well, and you have to, yeah, and this is a lot of them come because maybe they bought this house, and it's an older house, and there's an existing landscape, and they have some real trouble knowing what they have in there. And so if you're going to be the CEO of your yard and you don't know what's growing there, how do you take care of it properly? And so that's where we kind of start with that. And I encourage them to bring in, you know, the winter quarter is tough, but then the other time they can bring in samples. You know, and we do identification and that. They say, I have no idea what this is. Is this a weed or is it a perennial? You know, and so, so
got some of that
work
going,
on that.
I've got some of that going on too. I suppose pictures help too.
Oh yeah,
you know,
yeah, and some of them I said bring a picture, or if you bring the product in, you know, it's helpful because then, you know, and lots of times people think something's a weed and it's actually something valuable in their yard. So,
and sometimes it's too late because they've
well,
destroyed it with
they said,
killer.
I cut this down yesterday. Can you tell me what it is? I said, that's a really neat perennial. So,
what do you cover in terms of installation and maintenance education regarding landscape
okay,
planning?
well, basically, I try to tell them that in the Omaha area, you know, if you're going to be in landscape maintenance, there are 3 things you need to understand. You have to have knowledge of your living scape. That's all the plants. And, you know, if you have a certain kind of grass, you have a certain types of trees or perennials and that, you need to know what those are. Number 2, there's hardscape. That's a non-living thing, which could be different kinds of, or it could be a retaining wall, it could be boulders somewhere, it could be a deck, but that requires maintenance because of our weather patterns. And the final thing is that they have to understand about taking care of their equipment. And that is proper maintenance of the equipment. Probably the main thing is that dull pruners, you cannot believe the damage that will do to a plant. And so it tears tissue, gets that celery effect when you know, where then it tears tissue and it allows disease to come in, it allows insects in that. So we cover those 3 areas to just let them know, you know, like now, what do you do now in landscape design? It's a good time to maintain your equipment and see what, and maybe make a estimation of what you didn't do good last year and you can improve on in the spring.
Talking about Metropolitan Community College Continuing Education and Gardening and Landscaping with John Nabity. You talk about maintenance to some extent in your design class, but then there is the landscape maintenance yearly plan class.
Right.
Let's talk about that one because you have specific. I mean, a student will leave knowing that there are certain things you need to do each season, right?
And so in the design, we try to hit the highlights, you know, and maintenance is part of it. Now, the other one is only a 3-hour seminar, but everything.
Stop. You're sliding completely out of the camera.
I'm sorry.
That's what I was trying to get your attention. To
okay.
Back over. Every time you step back, half of you's cut out of the
okay,
shot.
it's the long lens. I'm sorry.
So that's okay. We'll pick it up wherever you.
Well, that's. I've never had to have somebody sit that close before.
Well, that's we go by the width of the legs here and out, and he slid so far back his chair and half of him. Well, you can see on there that he was sliding completely.
Okay. Well,
and if he kept sliding any farther, we were afraid he was going to be out of the shot.
Okay. Thank you. I'll stay here. So we're talking about. Go ahead.
Have Ken ask that question about what you were just asking him about. Ken,
okay.
And we'll come out on cam 3, Ken. Right.
Okay.
You're ready?
This is 3?
Yeah, you'll come out on 3, Ken.
Okay.
And we'll adjust. Okay, here we go. And he does. Okay, and 3, 2.
You talk about maintenance to some degree in the design class, but then you have a class about the yearly maintenance plan.
That's right.
Where you go into more detail about what folks need to do each season, and there are things that are incumbent on you.
That's a little different. That is a 3-hour seminar, and it's usually on a Saturday, and it's usually, again, a couple times it's here on the fort, but again, it's spread throughout the community and as they select the sites. But then we concentrate on specific issues, and one of the things that we concentrate on is just how hard it is to be positive in landscape and take care of things with the cycle of weather trends that we have. You know, last year we had a flood. This year we had a drought. We really didn't have a winter. Last year we had a cool down period, you know, because the frost line was almost non-existent, so a lot of things happened this year. So we stress that, what to look for. We talk about diseases. We talk about insects, particularly those that are predominant, and a lot of people just feel that all the insects in their yard are bad, and that's not true. A lot of them are beneficial, but they kill them anyway because they're a bug.
Yeah.
And that's not good.
Well, let's break it down a little bit regarding this class, the yearly plan class, the maintenance class. What do you do in the winter? I mean, what can you do in the winter?
Okay. Basically, and this actually comes from the horticulture credit classes, is we teach the students about IPM, Integrated Pest Management. And that's a philosophy, a very environmental friendly philosophy that's been around for quite some time, but I teach it for credit, and it goes on through. And so we tell these individuals that, you know, if you're going to be a good steward of your landscape, it would be to your best interest to follow this kind of philosophy. And to follow this means that you're going to take care of your yard and maintain it in an environmentally friendly procedure or process.
And that has to do with the winter in what way?
Well, like right now, you know, it's time to put everything to sleep. One of the key things in integrated pest management is to monitor the landscape. Well, okay, everything's going dormant. We haven't really entered winter quite that much, cold this morning, but you know, we'll find that you know, there's still pruning, there's still transplanting that can be done. Sometimes, you know, we cover some of those things so that they understand that, you know, just because it's after Labor Day, everything shuts down, and you know, that's not the case.
There's still more that you can do.
Oh, you bet.
Yeah.
And then once, like bulbs, you can still plant bulbs now. You know, a lot of people think, well, shoot, it's almost Thanksgiving, I can't do that. Well, the ground's not frozen. So you can really do that, and then you get into when you really can't do much, but you can still monitor. I mean, the winds around here are terrible to our plant material in that, and sometimes some of the soft tissue trees break, you know, and then the branches are up there dangling, you know, and if that isn't taken care of, could fall, could hurt people, and could hurt the house, who's to say? But monitor that. You move into the spring, you start seeing what survived. What kind of winter did we have? What do you look for? Do you have problems that occurred? Lots of times the evergreens, through extreme winds and that, will start to turn brown. And if it's cold for a long time and extreme winds, it can kill some shrubs.
Mm-hmm.
So.
I've had some of that.
Yeah, all of a sudden the green becomes brown, and you're saying, yes. Yeah.
So that takes us through the spring, kind of, to get ready for this. I mean, well, late in the spring now,
right.
We're talking about a whole different set of issues, right?
Right. Yeah, well, spring. Hopefully, if you use some of the winter to analyze what you did wrong or right, and then build on that a plan for the spring, and you follow that monitoring again. You see, you know, again, depending on the weather, are the perennials coming up? That if you have some, did the plant material, the trees and shrubs, did they survive good? Do you have any damage that you have to look at? What about the turf? Brown spots, something like that. And then, you know, we move into late spring and early summer, and then, you know, spring, of course, is an excellent time to start planting.
Sure.
You know, but plan first.
And then spring and fall, what's the maintenance plan?
Well, and okay, you go through the summer is the key thing, and if you follow this integrated pest management, then part of that is you do what we call preventative maintenance. In other words, you hear what the weather predictions are and things like this, and if you know, and you have to know your plant material, you know there may be some susceptibilities based on what's coming in that, and insects prevail as well as fungal spores in that when it gets hot and humid, you know. and there's a lot of stress on the plants, particularly when we have these winds. They lose moisture, and sometimes if they're newly planted, they can't recover. So you have that to deal with, and in the fall.
I said spring and fall. I meant summer and fall.
Okay,
yeah.
gotcha. That's right. And so summer, then you're kind of on a holding pattern. But again, there seems to be always some kind of insect that jumps into the thing you have to do with, like the Japanese beetle. You know, it's now very active, including on our campus here, and we have to watch for that, and we have to take protective measures to do that.
This last summer, the big issue was the drought.
Right.
To lawns, and I'm just curious what your reaction was to how people handled that. You know, there were people that tried to water, and some people just gave up on it.
Well, right, and that's part of it. I think that probably the advice would be with that type of situation, because we really haven't experienced that bad of a thing for so long, is not to overreact. Because what happened is, particularly like with perennials and that, they went dormant. Now, usually if they've been in the ground for a while, usually they can sustain what's going on because the root structure is way down there, and they're not relying on the lack of moisture that we didn't get, you know. So don't rule them out, because some people, the top died back and there's nothing there and they think it's dead, maybe. But you know, you've got to give it a chance.
With bluegrass, if you quit watering it,
it goes dormant.
It goes dormant. You think it's not dead.
No,
it's going to come back.
That's
I
right.
mean, that's kind of the tact I took.
Yeah, because you know,
I'm not going to pour water on.
Well,
this.
right, because quite frankly, with the kind of environment that we had, it would be very difficult unless you had a real good irrigation system to get what was needed in that. So it's not dead.
Not to mention the cost of it.
Oh yeah, oh yeah, you know,
Yeah.
and so you had to, you know, make some choices, but. That's where it kind of goes back to what's in your yard, what kind of turf, and if you know a little bit about that, then when those things happen, and who knows what 2013 is going to bring,
right?
But you're a little bit more prepared, so you're not going to make a mistake.
John, let's talk about another class, planning a successful vegetable garden.
Okay.
The class there. When's the next one?
Okay, this is 2 seminars, and they're 3-hour seminars, and I try to have both of them here on campus, because we can
Omaha campus.
Omaha campus, so we can kind of go out in the grounds and that. First one is probably, well, it's in the winter quarter, I want to say sometime in February.
Okay.
And that is an emphasis on vegetable garden planning. You know, this, even though it's winter time and that, because some people, maybe they never had a vegetable garden or herb garden, and they're thinking about doing it. Well, a lot of gardens start in the spring, and a lot of them don't go any further than that. People get discouraged because of the weather, or the thing we look at, do you have the proper location? And one of the key things is proper light, because if you don't have, I tell them 7 hours plus of natural light. Don't expect to, you know, go to the market with great tomatoes and peppers and things, because you're going to have spindly plants and very little fruit, you know.
So that's the number one thing, is you got to have sun, and I learned that the hard
so we
way
talk about, you know, proper planning, proper preparation of what you may need to do, because people say, well, I'm going to put a garden over there, and that's grass now, but that's going to be a veggie garden in the spring. Well, okay, but you gotta make that available for the plant material or the seeds. Now we talk about seeds, and they get information on where to get some seeds in that, and the importance of having a garden. You need to have kind of a mission statement with your garden, and that is you may like 35 different things, and you've never had a garden before, but this is based on what you like to eat and that. That's probably not the way to start a garden the first time. You probably take 10 or 12 things that you really like and start small and grow from there, because a lot of things can happen between, say, March and October, you know. And
each thing that you're dealing with needs to be treated a little differently.
Absolutely, yeah. You have you know, you can do things early with seeds, and like onion sets and seed potatoes and things like root crops, and that can be put out in the ground when it's workable, and they're not going to grow or sprout until the ground temperature warms up. So, but they're not going to die either if they're good quality products in that. And then you go into probably after May 15th is what people say, okay, it's time to put in our warm weather crops, you know, and there are some that will start ahead of time and do different things, but that's kind of like an old standby. It's not etched in stone, but yeah,
okay.
but that's when you put your starter plants out, and you know, or you're going to put in your, say, your beans. You're going to grow green beans. They're very temperature sensitive, so you don't want to put those out when temperatures can, you know, fluctuate.
Is there a great place for our viewers to go to get some basic information about this, or do they need to take the class?
Well, actually, if every class I promote the Douglas County Extension Office, because it is probably still, as the city grows and as people move in and out, it's probably one of the best kept secrets because of all the information that they offer. And a lot of what I give the people are NEB guides, which are consolidated information on a specific crop or particular plant, or like using mulch, you know, and they can get this, and it's put into user-friendly information, maybe 2 pages at the most. You can take a damaged leaf or something out there and say, you know what, or is it sick, what's wrong with it? If there's not someone in the office, they will take your name and number and get back to you. You can take and capture an insect.
Absolutely,
and,
I've done it.
And take it out in a baggie.
Over there on Center Street.
Right, about 82nd on the south side, you know. And that's what they're there for. And not only that, but they offer tons of other information on subjects, you know.
Back to landscape in the closing few minutes.
Sure.
Is there a basic zen to all this? I mean, as far as having a feel for the right plan.
Okay. Well,
or does it just depend on what you
well,
have in mind?
I think what you need to do is, the plan is essential. That is the foundation. Okay, so what components go into the plan? I think that then reflects on you or the family as to, number one, your expertise in plant material, and number two, where do you want to go with this? And that should be in the kind of a plan, or at least talked about. And then, like, I'll have students that will come into the landscape design class, and their weakness is perennials. They know it's a plant that usually comes back every year, but they have no idea of the broad selection. Well, then, you know, there's a handout I can give them, but I also can give them some textbook referrals, or say something, you know, how can you go out and buy a bunch of perennials that you have no idea what they're going to do in your yard? You know, so learn about that. If you're going to be having trees and you don't know a lot about trees, build up a portfolio. Go ask people, use the extension office, so that you can, again, you know, make that foundation plan solid.
I would assume one of the basic, or most blatant errors in judgment in all of this discussion comes under the heading of, you know, what works best in this climate. Right. Because you can buy a lot of plant material and do a lot of things that really aren't sound for Eastern Nebraska,
part of the plan is, I tell them, you need to have a good site analysis and understand what's in your yard, hardscape or living plant material. You need to understand the microclimate. A microclimate basically is any and all environmental factors that will impact your garden, the front of the house or the back of the house. They can be 2 different microclimates. Key thing in microclimates is, where's the prevailing winds. If you're out by UNO or something like this in a mature neighborhood, you probably don't worry too much because you've got trees and houses and everything. But what if you're in a new subdivision, you know? And then, you know, take those things and start looking as to what can adapt to your yard and also your needs. What do you want?
Again, a wide-ranging opportunity for continuing education classes, non-credit classes at Metro Community College. Horticulture, the landscaping we've been talking about, culinary, regional travel, photography. You can check it all out on the website. John, lots of great information. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Very interesting.
You bet. Okay.
And thank you for being with us on Metro and More. Our goal is to better acquaint you with the mission, leadership, and the reach of the college. I'm Kent Pavelka from Metropolitan Community College. Start here, go anywhere.
This has been a MetroVision production produced by Metropolitan Community College.